Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Shivana Wedayati and my partner.
My name is Dea Yudiana Alexa Pradita.
We are from Group 8. We will present our material. The title is The Analysis of Language Teaching Materials Inside the Trojan Horse. What is the purpose of analyzing materials? So the purpose is to investigate their nature as a step distinct from evaluating their worth for a specified purpose or context. Actually, the researcher's main purpose is to develop a framework which separates an analysis of materials from assumption about what is desirable. So we need a general framework which allows materials to speak for themselves and which helps teacher analysis to look closely into materials before coming to their own conclusion about desirability. So, a general framework for analyzing materials have 3 points. First is, what aspect of materials should we examine? Second, how can we examine materials? And the last, how can we relate the findings to our own teaching context? So, what aspect of materials should we examine? So, the focus is on materials as a pedagogic device that is as an aid to teaching and learning a foreign language. This will limit the focus to aspects of the methodology of the materials and the linguistic nature of their content. For this part, the framework which is proposed in, as you can see in figure 8.1, draws extensively on both the Brain and Candlin and Richard and Rogers models in attempt to provide the basis for a more comprehensive listing of the aspects which, from a pedagogic viewpoint, need to be taken into account when analyzing materials. So, this framework consists of 2 main sections. First is publication. Publication refers to the tangible or physical aspect of the materials and how they appear as a complete set, whether on paper or electronically. So, first is place of the learner's materials in any wider set of materials. Here we will be considered with the relationship that may exist between the student's materials and any other components. The second is published form of the learner's materials. It is actual form of materials, for example, paper print versus electronic. The third is subdivision of learner's materials into sections. For example, in a class, touchstone is the material that the learners are supposed to study, and this material have 12 sections or units. And fourth, subdivision of section into subsection. For example, touchstone have 12 sections or units, and each section has 4 subsections, that Lesson A, Lesson B, Lesson C, and Lesson D. So the fifth is continuity. How a sense of continuity or coherence is maintained. It means all parts of materials should fit together well. Actually, there should be a large connection between the sections of materials. 6 is route, whether the order in which the material can be used is predetermined or specified by the teacher or not. Also, the route can be user-determined. And the last is access. This final aspect of publication suggests how access into the materials is supported, whether there are contents lists, word lists, indexes, search facilities, and so on. The second section in the framework is design. Relates to the thinking of underlying materials. This will involve consideration of areas. Actually, we have 9 areas for the design of materials. First is aims. The apparent aims of the materials, such as the development of general English, ESP, or specific skills. And second, principles of selection. This section refers to how the task, language, and context in the materials are selected, such as a particular syllabus type and the use of corpora. The third is principle of sequencing. This section is the same as the previous section, that how the task, language, and content in the materials are selected, such as a particular syllabus type and the use of corpora. Fourth, subject matter and focus of subject matter. This section refers to the nature and focus of content in materials, such as cross-curricular content, storylines, topics. So, cross-curricular is affecting or connected with different parts of the school curriculum. And curriculum is the subject that are included in a course of study or taught in a school, college, etc. It is an overall plan for a course or program. Syllabus is a description of contents of a course of instruction and the order in which they are to be taught. The fifth is type of teaching or learning activities. An analysis of this section will need to focus on first, what they require the learner to do, and manner in which they draw on the learner's process competence, knowledge, affect, abilities, skills. Process competence refers to learners' capacity to draw on different realms of knowledge, concept, social behavior, and how language is structured. Their affect, attitude, and value, their abilities to express, interpret, and deduce meanings, and to use the different skill of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. The sixth is participation. Teaching or learning activities are also likely to suggest modes of classroom participation. For example, whether the students are to work alone or in a groups. 7 is learner roles, and 8 is teacher roles. By means of participation, working alone or in groups, the roles of teachers and learners are to adopt. And the last is roles of the materials. We examine the materials to determine what role they intend for themselves. Do they, for example, aim to micromanage the classroom event, or do they only provide ideas that teachers and learners are actively encouraged to critically select from or develop? Next, how can we examine the materials? So we have 3 levels to examine the materials. First is what is there. Second is what is required of users. And the last is what is implied. What is there? In this level, there is the explicit nature of the materials. We might begin, for example, with statements found within the materials. We can also look at the cycle aspect of materials, such as first, their published form, the second, number of pages, the third, use of colors, fourth, the total number of components, fifth, how the materials is divided into sections, and last is subdivisions of units and modules. Next is what is required of users. In this, we will need to first divide the materials into constituent tasks and analyze each task. What is the learner expect to do? Who with what content? So what is task? Following Brain and Candlin, tasks refer to any proposal contained within the materials for action to be undertaken by learners, which has the direct aim of bringing about the learning of the foreign language. Tasks have 3 aspects. First, how, a process through which learners and teachers are to go. Second, with whom, classroom participation concerning with whom the learners are to work. And the last is about what, content that learners are to focus on. As you can see on the figure 8.4, that questions for the analysis of tasks. The first question, what is the learner expected to do? Contains 3 subsections. There is first, turn take. So turn take refers to the role in classroom that the learners are expected to take. Are they produce a scripted response to direct questions? Are they asked to initiate? Are they not required to take any direct interactive role at all? For example, listening or grammar explanation. Second is focus. Focus refers to whether the learners are asked to attend to the meaning of the language, its form, or both. Mental operation. Next is mental operation. Mental operation refers to the mental process required. For example, repetition, deducing language rules, or broader processes such as negotiating, hypothesizing, and so on. The second question is who with? This asks about classroom participation. Who are the learners to work with alone, in pairs or groups, or with the whole class? And the third question is with what content? This asks about the nature of content, of the input, and of the learner's expected output. Is it written or spoken? That's form. Where does it come from? The materials, the teacher, or the learners themselves? That source, and what is its nature? And what is its nature is it? For example, grammar explanation, personal information, fiction, general knowledge, and so on.
What is implied subjective inference? Working from a description of the explicit nature of the material level 1 and an analysis of text level 2, it will now be possible to. The first is deduce aims, principles of selection and sequence. The second is deduce teacher and learner rules. The third is deduce demands on learner's process competence. And the last is deduce the role of the material in facilitating language learning and teaching. How can we make use of the findings from the analysis? Many evaluation instruments contain within the designer own beliefs about how language teaching should be, and so prohibit a natural description of the materials and the application of the teacher analysis own views of what is appropriate for the content. The analytical framework for analyzing a material can be used. The first is assist in material evaluation and decision making. The second is teacher our professional development. The third is material designer critical self-evaluation. The fourth is researchers study of language teaching. And this is material evaluation. There is a clear distinction between an analysis of the material, an analysis of proper situation of use, the process of matching and evaluation, and subsequent action. By dividing the various stages, careful account can be taken of each element in material evaluation. Material may be analyzed so as to expose the first is internal nature, and the second is make the analysis subjective interpretation, and similarly, the nature of the situation in which the material would be used can be also analyzed independently. Next, about a material designer. For material designer, the process of applying the schedule for analysis to their own work can be a useful experience. An analysis of material followed by a simple question, is this what I am aiming at, can cause a writer to rethink the design of the material. Actually, the analysis of the material can help designers to self-evaluate themselves. Next is teacher professional development, a detailed analysis of material. The first is facilitate teacher deep understanding of what is involved in the teacher-learning relationship. The second is why some tasks fail whilst others succeed in classroom. The third is a teacher in understanding their own teaching style. The fourth is why they feel comfortable or uncomfortable with the proposed method of the material. Research studies in language teaching. The schedule for analyzed material may also be of use to research in language teaching. Using an earlier version of the model, Gila Talks then show how the schedule can be used to uh, operationalize this SLA theory-derived feature in the design of the material. The last is conclusion. Andrew Littlejohn began this paper by suggesting that the complex nature of modern-day materials and the extent to which their use is now widespread necessitates a means of closely analyzing material so that we can see inside them and take more control over their design and use. One of the aims of this research has been to endeavor to dispel to a legend that materials are a closed book and reveal through the process of reverse engineering how they work. Okay, thank you. Okay, maybe that's all about our presentation. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.